Hello again, everyone, and thanks for checking us out. This, of course, is another segment of Chicago Lawyer Magazine's Inside Out, an exploration of different aspects of the law from our unique husband and wife team made up of David Susler. He has the inside perspective. He is the Associate General Counsel at National Material LP. The outside view comes from Christina Martini. She is a partner at DLA Piper here in Chicago. I'm Andy Shaw, President and CEO of the Better Government Association. That's bettergov.org. Check us out sometime. And let's get on with the task at hand. The subject today is defining success. And let me start by asking you how you think the concept of defining success has changed over the years that you've been lawyers. Both of you have a number of years under your belt. Is it the same as always, or is it a new set of parameters?
I would say that in large part it's the same. I think, at the end of the day, we're here to service clients and to help them achieve their goals, to do it ethically, to act ethically, morally, to help those who can't help themselves from a pro bono perspective. I think a lot of it is the same as it was many years ago. I think it's the way that you get there that has changed significantly.
So is the billing pressure greater or lesser? Is the workload heavier or lighter, or how's that changed?
Well, there's more of a billing pressure, and I think it's because of a recognition that law firms are businesses. And it's not that it wasn't seen necessarily that way before, but every time that you have an economic downturn, there's always a stark realization that you have to run your business as a business, and law firms are businesses just like everybody else. And so that drives billing pressures, and that also drives the need to be very mindful about the types of matters that you take as a law firm. And it's very similar in-house too. It may present itself a little bit differently, but it's also, technology has revolutionized the practice of law as well. So there's been a shift in expectations, there's been a shift in the timing, there's been a shift in how quickly and the velocity with which attorneys have to practice, and a lot of it is driven by the globalization of business and the fact that things are a lot more 24/7 than they used to be.
And as a non-lawyer, I would think that defining success is significantly different in-house from outside, but maybe I'm mistaken. I would only say that because I see more of the billing pressure on the outside and more of the service demands on the inside.
There are some differences, but I would say they're more surface than not. I think that, one, I would echo what Tina said, and I think the sort of the universals that have always been there. To succeed as a lawyer, you've always got to do outstanding work, you've got to be honest, and you've got to be ethical. That doesn't change. But in the in-house, you still have to do great work. You're still practicing as a lawyer and helping your business clients manage their business and helping the business succeed. And the ultimate goal of a business is to make money. So the pressures driven by the economy, especially post-Great Recession, are tremendous. So that's very similar. It may look different in-house. Most in-house lawyers don't bill their time. There are some who do, and that's, it's for a different purpose, but it may be charged back to a business unit. But performance, output, success, outstanding work is just as important in-house.
And you've both been lawyers for more than a decade, so what's the single biggest change on the success meter since you started out? In other words, if you could see one thing where a measure of success has changed over the time you've been a lawyer, maybe there isn't anything different, but is there one thing that maybe jumps out as being a kind of a new variable, if there is one?
I would say that there are a couple of things that have become increasingly important to be able to say that you're successful, or at least help position you to be maybe in a better spot to be able to say that you're successful. One of which is what I alluded to earlier about the technology.
That's where I knew you were going.
It's very important for you to respond, and there's an expectation that either when you're, even when you're traveling and vacationing, that you're still going to respond in a very timely fashion. You can't rely on the mail to either send stuff or to get stuff. It's just things are happening, instantaneously now. I would also say that from a client service perspective, which sort of goes hand in hand with the technology, the technology is part of a bigger issue with respect to client service. There are fewer and fewer differentiators now with respect to how lawyers differentiate themselves from one another. Part of it is what some would say is the commoditization of at least certain aspects of the legal practice. So what we're seeing is a sort of, I would say, a pattern or a trend towards needing to differentiate yourself in other meaningful ways from other people. And I think that's where different aspects of client service comes in, and that's why there's been all this recent discussion about emotional intelligence and things in that vein, because it's by exercising, I guess, emotional intelligence and being really tuned in and empathetic to your clients and just understanding where they're coming from and having that drive the client service process, that helps you to differentiate yourself more than maybe some other service providers.
Would you say that there's been a significant change in how people define success in your profession?
In the in-house world, I think, well, the nature of in-house practice has changed from the time really I started practicing law to today. And over the last 25 years, especially over the last 15 years, in-house has become a very prestigious destination type position, attracting the best and the brightest, where when I started practicing law, it really wasn't seen in that way. So that's a big change. I think the qualities that measure success remain pretty much the same. But again, the way you get there and some of the pressures have changed. And I agree with what Tina said, technology is a big driver of it. I think there's been a shift in the focus. It's always, we're a service profession, lawyers have clients, but where it used to be, the focus was really more on the client, and the client service wasn't as emphasized as heavily as it is today. So now the focus has shifted more to client service. I think that's driven by the growth of mobility of both lawyers and clients. And that has been really over the last 25 years, maybe it really started 30 years, but significantly over the last 25 years, where both lawyers and clients tend to move firms, and previously they didn't.
And so, a logical final question, you've both mentored young lawyers. What do you say to a young lawyer today who asks you, how do I succeed here, either inside or out? And would that answer be any different than it would have been 10, 15 years ago? Would it be basically the same answer? Do you have to tell people now that you better be a fast tweeter and know how to use Instagram, or is that a little bit overly simplistic?
Well, I would tell them that they need to be sure that they know exactly what they're getting into and that they need to do their homework much more than I would have told them 10 or 15 years ago. They need to understand the financial commitment. They need to understand the challenges of getting particular types of jobs after law school. They need to understand what it takes to be successful once they graduate, that they need to do very well in school to get a great job. Once they land that great job, it's, every day is a new day, meaning that they need to show that they're committed. They need to work extraordinarily hard. They need to be intellectually curious and show that they have that fire in the belly. And they need to just understand that it isn't just about billing hours, and if you bill X number of hours, therefore you'll be successful, that there's so much more that goes into it. You've got to be a terrific lawyer from a practitioner's perspective. You have to be seen as driving value in client relationships, which I think is sometimes one of the hardest things for young lawyers to understand, is that yes, there are hours requirements and you need to abide by them, but you can't just mindlessly bill to files without thinking about, is the amount of time I bill to this, am I really driving value, or am I presenting a value add or not? And because that's going to determine their long-term successes, whether they help drive client relationships.
And if you'd explained this complicated and difficult process to a young Tina Martini, you think you would have gone into law?
Sounds
pretty daunting.
I look back on my 20-year career and I still really love what I do. And I still sort of have the passion for it. And I think that's really, if I had to sort of sum it up in 5 words or less, I'd say you have to really have a passion for this and know what it's going to take and believe in your heart of hearts that as you continue to progress, that this will be your passion, because it's the passion that's going to see you through.
And what would you be telling your young mentee?
It's actually fairly similar to what Tina said. A lot of the advice that I give is the advice my father gave me, and then I've heard lawyers say, big one is, I wish I knew then how much business what a large role business plays in the practice of law. And that just, I can't emphasize that enough to a young lawyer.
When you say business, do you mean the understanding of the economic pressures on firms and companies, or
No,
business in a different
understanding how business works.
you're in a
Understanding
business.
client businesses, so
understanding
that you
your-
understand the
right.
context in which the legal advice is being
Right.
given.
You know, having taking some business courses in school. But I also tell people, because the nature of the practice has changed so much over the last 25 years. And I do tell people who are considering going into law, and I tell people in law school, you know, if you're considering going to law school, I say, have a good reason. I'm still a big fan of going to law school, but you need to have a good reason, because you have to understand, it's a tough job. It's a tough way to make a living. If you're going into it to get rich, you're most likely going to fail, and you're certainly going to be miserable. But if you're going into it with the right reason, because you have a passion for it, whatever that may be, then go for it, and just try to understand what you're getting into. Without repeating what Tina said, I would just
And the knowledge of business is interesting, because, you know, Seventh Circuit Judge Richard Posner, who's a friend, actually talked about how the toughest thing for judges these days is that the technical aspects of the business world, especially in the Googles of the world and the Microsofts, you get these cases, and it's stuff that nobody ever learned in law school. And you don't have a clue about how to deal with these, and you deal with an intellectual property, and these battles between these titans fighting over gigabytes, which to most people is like a foreign language.
Right.
And I just find that impressive.
And that specific example is really getting into technology, and in business, understanding how businesses think and act, what their motivations are, how business people work together to get things done. Some of it may be understanding balance sheets, but that's really a limited part of it. But businesses work differently than law firms.
And I think the word that struck me most, having spent a lot of years feeling passionate about a variety of jobs, is you've got to have passion. I had passion every day in my entire news career, and passion now in the nonprofit world. If you lose that, you've kind of lost pretty much everything.
Yes.
Okay, so that's defining success. Tina Martini, David Susler, thanks. This has been another segment of Chicago Lawyer Magazine's Inside Out. Join us next month, where we switch gears and look at the multi-dimensional aspects of law, not just law, but the humanistic side of law. I'm Andy Shaw. Thanks for tuning in. See you soon.